Hey, how's it going everyone? One of the biggest points of contention I've received in many of my videos is in regards to the speed scaling for both Naruto and One Piece. There has been quite a bit of pushback on the notion that many of these characters can possibly move, fight, or react at the speed of light. And it doesn't just seem to end at One Piece or Naruto. I've read a comment or two that even go as far as to say that no character can realistically move as fast as light or faster, so today I wanted to touch upon this topic. Now, a lot of the arguments I see seem to boil down to the following ideas. Characters can't move at the speed of light because our concept of physics says that nothing can move as fast or faster than light. Characters can't move at the speed of light because the energy or force they would create would cause massive consequences on their environment. My suspension of disbelief doesn't allow me to imagine or accept a character moving at these speeds. I can't imagine a character actually being capable of moving at the speed of light. The author didn't actually intend for these characters to move faster than light, they're just using the term light speed to give the audience the idea that they're moving really fast. Light in these verses is much slower than our concept of light. If the characters can move at the speed of light, then why don't they perform X feat? These are some of the most common arguments that I see when discussing the potential speed of fictional characters. Before I tackle each one of these points, I think we should first figure out how fast light is. In a vacuum, the speed of light travels at 299,792,458 meters per second. Now, whether or not you include the idea that these characters come from fictional stories, it does seem pretty outlandish to think that anyone or anything could travel, combat, or react at these speeds. The first 2 points come from the idea that light is the universal speed limit. Thanks to Albert Einstein's theory of relativity, nothing can move faster than light. The theory states that as matter approaches the speed of light, the matter's mass becomes infinite. Objects with mass cannot ever reach the speed of light. If an object ever did reach the speed of light, its mass would become infinite. And as a result, the energy required to move the object would also become infinite. Now, with this brief explanation, is it possible for fictional characters to move at the speed of light or faster than light? The answer is yes, and it's all thanks to a simple word, fiction. It may be true that in real life nothing can move at the speed of light, but there's no rule that says fictional characters or objects can't. When developing their story and the world within that story, the author has complete control over what rules and logic that story needs to adhere to. Many stories use settings or details that can mirror the real world, and there can be many details, big or small, that may function similarly to our world. It may sound nitpicky, but this ultimately falls under a case-by-case scenario where just because one world may adhere more towards real-world logic, it doesn't mean other stories will do the same. If an author were to write that a character can move at the speed of light, then no amount of logic, mental gymnastics, or real-world physics can ever deny that character's ability to move at the speed of light. Now, One Piece is, as far as the making of this video, the biggest source for most of my content. Most of my examples will come from this story, but I'll sprinkle in some examples from other shonen here and there. One Piece is a story where the main character ate a mystical fruit that turned his body into rubber, 2 of his crewmates are a talking reindeer and a living skeleton that ate mystical fruits that granted them human intelligence and life after death, respectively. There are 10 to 20 million islands across the world. There are country-sized islands in the sky, one of which is held up entirely by balloons. Their world is inhabited by fishmen, mermaids, giants, dwarves, and furries. There is an entire country where the houses and buildings are made up of different edible foods, and an island where it is always daytime year-round. I could go on, but I think you get the point that this is a fantasy world. Even at the beginning of the story, you can already tell that these characters aren't exactly normal humans. The 4th villain the Straw Hats come across, Captain Kuro, has the Pussyfoot maneuver, which allows him to move so fast he completely disappears and isn't visible by normal humans. This ability is compared directly to the shave ability CP9 uses, with the only caveat being that Kuro himself can't see where he's going because of his speed. The 5th villain in the story, Don Krieg, doesn't have any powers and relies entirely on his arsenal of weapons. This man is so strong that he can stop a paddle boat with one arm and then toss it dozens of feet into the air with said arm. These are some of the first characters we come across, and if anything, these are some of the most grounded examples in the series. Saying that characters from this story aren't capable of moving at the speed of light because it doesn't realistically make sense is disingenuous, especially when Oda, the author, has written in so many feats and statements, arc after arc, that imply this is possible. Near the end of Thriller Bark, we are introduced to Bartholomew Kuma. This character establishes some of the first tangible Lightspeed feats and statements in the series. He states that his pad cannon can deflect or repel air at light speed. He then thrusts his arms and launches multiple Lightspeed projectiles at Zoro, who successfully dodges them, implying at least Lightspeed reaction time. This is further backed up by a later feat where Kuma fires a beam of light at Zoro, who doesn't move until after the beam is fired, and barely dodges it. In the next arc, we are introduced to Kizaru and the Pacifista, who can generate and shoot beams of light that are replicated from Kizaru's Glint Glint fruit, which turned him into a light man. Kizaru asks Basil Hawkins if he has ever been kicked at the speed of light. There are entire panels that confirm these beams are rays of light and that they have been reproduced from Kizaru's abilities. In just 2 arcs, we have multiple statements and feats supporting the idea that characters can use attacks that travel at the speed of light, generate beams of light, and characters that can react and move at the speed of light. All of this happens before we even reach the time skip. If you have multiple feats and multiple statements that continue to back up a claim or idea that characters can move or react to the speed of light, then it becomes clear that it's the author's intention for this to be the case. The author's intent should be considered as an objective fact within the context of these stories. One of the things that I often hear deniers say is that the author didn't actually intend for these characters to move faster than light. They are just using the term light speed to give the audience the idea that they're moving really fast. This is one of the more disingenuous arguments I come across because it implies that the statements or feats written by the author are all hyperbolic. This couldn't be further from the truth. Besides the fact that these arguments usually have no evidence to back them up, one would need to either find a quote from the author that directly supports these claims, or they would have to speak directly to the author and get a quote from them on record. Otherwise, this is simply unsubstantiated headcanon and denial. Speaking of which, some of the more uncommon responses I see in regards to different series are the statements, "My suspension of disbelief doesn't allow me to imagine or accept a character moving at these speeds," or "I can't see these characters actually being the speed of light." These arguments usually fall under the logical fallacy of personal incredulity. Arguments from incredulity are based on the fact that the person in question cannot believe something is true, therefore it isn't. I don't think I need to explain why this is disingenuous. These arguments usually stem entirely from one's own disbelief and completely ignore all evidence that could be presented. Moving on, I can imagine some viewers wondering, well, even if these characters can move at the speed of light within their stories, how can you say that their concept of light is as fast as ours? This kind of question is only applicable if the story has gone through any length to imply that their speed of light moves at a speed that is different from ours. This isn't exactly anime, but I believe this example is applicable. In Season 2, Episode 10 of Futurama, Dr. Farnsworth revealed that the speed of light was increased in 2208. This example provides clear evidence that light speed within the context of Futurama is faster than our concept of light. For one to claim that the speed of light in any anime or cartoon moves faster than our concept of light, there has to be some kind of evidence that either backs up this claim or at least implies it. Throughout the entirety of One Piece, Naruto, and most other shonen, there is absolutely zero implication that their concept of light is any faster or slower than ours. In other words, this question ultimately comes down to sheer conjecture. The final point I want to go over is, if characters can move at the speed of light, then why don't they perform X feat? This is known as a loaded question. It's a trick question which presupposes an unverified assumption. The question is attempting to imply that if a character doesn't perform a specific feat, then they can't be Lightspeed. Questions like this try to completely ignore any evidence already presented in an attempt to invalidate not only the character's established feats and statements, but also the author's intent. If you're wondering why these characters don't travel across the planet in an instant, or why they use regular forms of transportation, then the answer is simple. They don't have to travel at the speed of light for every situation, or the author simply doesn't want them to do that. That's pretty much all I wanted to say on this topic. I'll be making a more dedicated speed scaling video for One Piece in the near future, so be on the lookout for that. If you guys enjoy my content or like hearing me yap about random topics, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Thank you all so much for watching. Peace out.